let me get out Granddaddy's 35, or math equation 33. You know what, it might be 055. And then again, it just might be that one that doesn't exist, that if it does exist, then we're all part of it. We need to see psychological help. Yeah. Well, anyways, inside here.
Hey,
this can be a punt
everybody?
gun.
This is Titan from Titan's
you know what you're doing with this stuff. This stuff can be a BFG build. Okay, G code and M code. We got ghost guns, which most of this technology goes to. Not just the CNCs or the smaller ones that are not industrial size, X to X prime. Right, I'll change it out. I'll make a number. Well, keeping in line to equivalent, equal but not equal to, 6 in my number or 10 in his. If I have a 10 in his 6 here, these 3 pieces that he does in polarizing wave functions, you get why hydrogen is this in a solid state. Now the numbers here are arbitrary, but you can do this at the base tone. 0s and 1s, 1s and 2s, 2s and 3s. And you'll get 5 and 7 and 3 and a bunch of other things popping up in 2 different paragrams, right? But I don't necessarily need you to do the field trip with X numbers of students and Y, N number of students and Y number of ands, right? What I need you to do, downright motivate. These girls killed me on that. This is like, man, brothers, we're going to have to watch out. We're going to have to look inside here to some of this language variable that we're not getting, that they can make this manual gravitational code or movement guaranteed, however you want to say X prime is, remember, because inside here we might get to a point where we have to take a lot of this out. I'm taking a lot of this material out just for X and X prime, and this is bar. Now I have a quote to X is, actually I have this one too, equivalent to, or not equal, I actually have it as X is not equivalent to 0. And now why does that not make sense? Now it shouldn't make sense, right? Because if X has to equal 0, right? We want 0 in the state mathematically. That means we rounded off everything here, and that's a very complicated thing to understand. But I'll give you X is not equal to 1, not 0, not to 1. And then I'll give you X prime is equal to X, or equivalent to X. And you might have to look at this, and when you get the photoelectric effect, that'll help you deal with what you're dealing with there for the equivalency of these 2 prime functions, where generationally speaking, if X and A, or A and B, A and Y are those students, Stefan and Jenna, and NMM for the F inside here, then X would not be equivalent to X prime, and X would not be equivalent to 0. Or it would be equal, or they took a different route. There was polarization, motion and position, time topology, top of the Mariana, bottom of the Mariana, top of the Himalayas. You got Haiti over here, or Himalayan. Now, so those are vastly different ways of water Calicon combinations will still have the same permutation of a kid coming up. Or how operations in a specific mill are going to work. What do we do here? Go grab a tool. And then I'm going to hit end of block, enter, M16. But what are we doing here? We're still doing the same stuff.
The machine, the operation is going to be a $10,000 piece of equipment here.
And that's a real hard thing to understand, even if you come from the CNC machines, saws, and I'm a human part of this biometric. I'm a huge piece of its arbiter at 0 and 1 fractiles to the percentage or combination of steps. When I get it in there, 1 plus 1 is 2 to the nth, the cubic root, or the nth root to what these standards 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1 will correlate to their position in the video card here. Now that is heavy duty stuff. I mean, we're talking about super heavy that people in a ancient Egyptian or ancient wherever stoneworking system still follows the, if it's ting 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 or the proper angles inside of those things, it's really hard to kind of get that that's a feel of hand that these math equations will represent. The combination of the permutation. I have a technique, somebody else has a technique. There are multiple ways of G-coding and encoding those things, but at gravity, only in the test, realistically, that we added those values. We checked their thing. Nth is first, but not an F. It's an Euler's number at 50% the decimal in there, where it is faster. But I might lose it if I don't train the G's or the M's differently. Right? You know, there's a lot of stuff in here where it's all G-code, but somebody can basically handle it, right? And most of those N movements are just compounding models of close to zero, equal to zero, equivalent to zero. But without the proper computer configure tree to get going around in here, the message gets all messed up. And this thing just winds up eating it, and then you taste metal on the knee, you know. And or drop something or whatever the known negative variable. I talked about it in one of those statements. There's very specific maths. Now again, I'm still learning them, so I'm still getting good with. I could probably get there and do the machine, and it would just flow, right? Y'all, some of you brothers and sisters know what I'm talking about. But when it comes to analytically breaking down the Engling's, Euler's numbers of time dilations, which are the faster ones, are kind of realizing, before I go to the next step, I have to take this fractal in consideration. They're dividing, if in step one is in superposition of those two moves, and one of them is right. And that's the combination of the permutation to these kinds of notations.
We can move around, we're not going to hit anything. But now we're going to actually submerge. We're going to drop